Welcome to Pour Painting with Ron. In today's video we're going to be doing a multi-ring pour. Now if you're not familiar with ring pours, this is one I've prepared earlier to give you an idea of what the end result could look like. This was a multi-ring pour I did a little while ago using two pours on my canvas. Now the idea with these, to create these interesting circle shapes, is to layer the paint in your cup, and then as you pour the paint out on your canvas, you twirl the cup in little circles to make the rings until your cup is empty, and then you stretch it out like normal to stretch out your rings to make interesting designs. Now if you have a smaller canvas or even a bigger canvas, you can do one ring. There's nothing wrong with doing a single ring. Or if you have a larger canvas, you can play around with doing a couple of rings next to each other, like this one. Now today's canvas is going to be a bigger one, so I'm going to be using 3 cups of paint. So the canvas I'm using today is 40 centimeters by 80 centimeters, and I've prepared it in the usual way by putting my giant push pins in the back and taping off the back with painter's masking tape just to keep the back looking nice. Now the paint I'm going to be using today are all Montmartre colours, and I've tried to keep it relatively simple today. I want a simple looking design today. Now I don't normally do a base coat over my canvas when I'm doing a ring pour, but today I want to have some negative space between my rings. So I am going to have a background today. I'm going to use the Montmartre black today. I'll keep the mix pretty thin to coat my canvas with. You'll see how thin I'm using the mix today in a bit. Right, so once that's done, I'll create the rings today using red and gold, both Montmartre colours. Now I haven't used the gold before, but I've found in the past that metallic colours you need to mix a bit thicker than you would normally mix other colours, otherwise they tend to disappear in your mix once you pour it out on the canvas. Right, so this one will be a bit thicker than the red. Both will be thicker than my base coat. And then my pouring medium today is just going to be Floetrol. Now be careful with Floetrol, it's lovely to use but it can get a bit lumpy, especially if you've used part of your bottle already and you're getting to the bottom. Now you can buy an expensive filter to go over the top to collect the lumps, but all I've done was tied a piece of stocking over the top, and I just leave it sitting there, and that catches all the lumps that may have developed in the Floetrol, and I've never had a lump come out yet. So a bit of stocking works great. Okay, let's get to it. Right, so here are my paints. Got way too much paint here, but I'd rather have too much than not enough, as is my usual case. You can always keep leftovers for another pour another day. Now if I was doing a flip cup pour or something like that, I'd make sure that all my consistencies across my paints were the same, like thick honey. But because I'm doing a base coat on this one, I like to keep the base coats relatively thin so I can pour off the excess I don't need and they don't muddy up whatever I put on the top. So I've kept my black really thin. Hopefully you can see. Just makes a tiny little mound when I pour it off the spoon. And if I do my little circles, the circle only stays there for 1 or 2 seconds. I have mixed 1 part paint to 1.5 parts Floetrol and a little bit of water to get this consistency. Now the gold is my metallic colour, and as you can see I've kept that really thick, hopefully not too thick, but I'd rather keep it on the thicker side than the thin side, otherwise it'll just blend with everything else and disappear. I don't really want it blending with the black because gold and yellow and black make a horrible green colour, which I don't really want. So this was 1:1 paint and Floetrol with a little bit of water. This one too I kept reasonably thick because I don't really want to keep my colours, I don't really want my colours mixing together. So if I do the little circle, the bump stays there for 3 or 4 seconds. So I've kept that reasonably thick, but not quite as thick as the gold. Again, this one was 1:1 paint and Floetrol with some water to get the consistency I want. Although you may need to play around with how much Floetrol and water you use, depending on how thick your paint is to begin with. Okay, as I said before, I don't normally do a base colour. Some people like to put a white base on or something just to make their other paint flow nicely across the canvas. Sometimes when I do ring pours without a base, I pour my ring on and then I just put some white around the outside edges just to help my rings expand outwards without rolling over top of each other. All right, so my first step is going to be doing my background. I'll just move these out the way. This is the messy bit, as you'll soon see. Hopefully you can see that. All right, so I won't use all this black. I mixed up about 800 grams, but I don't think I'll use as much as that. So I'll just pour it on. Hopefully it works today, otherwise I will have wasted a lot of paint. So I just spread it out a little bit. So this was about 400 grams. It's almost enough, but not quite. So I'll just get some out of this other cup. Lasts for ages, as long as you keep a bit of plastic over the top, or you can put it in a squeeze bottle. Just give it a bit of a shake again before you want to use it again in another painting. You go through lots of white and black. That's probably enough. I'll keep, so that was about half the cup. So I've used about 500, 600 grams of black there. I'll just spread it a bit. Looks really nice once you've coated the canvas. I think so anyway. Okay. And now I'm going to tip off most of it because there's way too much on there. Okay, you can see it's tipping it off. Let's go down to this corner. You can see how messy this is. Go down to the other corner. You really want your canvas coated, but you don't want it thick. Go down to this end. It's raining black. So it takes a bit for the paint to work its way down to the other end. Be patient, it will get there. Down to this corner. This corner. We're just about there. Okay. And then you need to go around the canvas just with your fingers and touch up any bits that you missed. Oh, I've missed a bit on the other side. I'll try not to drip. We're covered now. Cool. I'll just go and wash my hands and then we'll continue. Okay, reasonably clean gloves again. Now, before I do anything else, I'll just torch briefly the surface of my painting to get rid of the air bubbles. Don't have to torch a lot. Just popping any bubbles that are there. Okay, so that's my background layer complete. Now I'll just move this aside so you can see what I'm doing next. Yeah, black just goes everywhere. All right, so I'm using 3 cups today. 3 cups today in my painting. Don't know if I'll use all the colour. If you have too much paint, then your rings have nowhere to stretch to. So I'll try to be good and keep that to a minimum. Now I want red to be on my most outside edge of my rings, so I'll pour some red into my cups first. I'm not after cells or anything, so there's no silicone in here today. Okay, and then I'll just layer red and gold in turn. I'll just slide it down the side of my cup. I'm not after sort of layers today, like I would in a flip cup. I'm pouring down one side of my cup and I'll pour out from that side as well. I hope this works. Well, if it doesn't, you won't see it on YouTube. Now, I really hope my gold doesn't disappear and I just end up with red. That would be disappointing. I'll just do one more layer of each colour, finishing with the red, because I want the red on the outside and I want it on the inside as well. Okay, now hopefully that's enough for my rings today. We'll soon find out. Anyway, so let's move those aside. Wipe my hands again. So here we have our canvas. Now I don't want to put the rings too close to the edge because then I'll just lose them over the edge when I tilt. But I was thinking of putting like some rings here and maybe one there, so not quite next to each other. We'll see if that works. Okay, I'll start with the middle one. So perhaps here. Now you want to get the cup as close as you can to the surface. And as you pour, you twirl it around to make the rings. It's certainly bright. And then you want to catch any little drip as you finish. Number one. And then I'll do the other one up here. Catch the drip. And then my third one up here. Now because my base was fairly thin, the thicker paint slides over the top. Caught the drip. Now that's probably too much paint, but we shall see it. I like how it looks, the gold and the red and the black, they just look awesome together. I'll just pop bubbles. Now you don't have as many bubble problems with Floetrol as you do with glue and water mix, but I still like to give it a torch to get rid of bubbles that may still be there. I did mix these up a couple of hours ago, but you can mix them up the night before to get rid of even more bubbles. Okay. Now this is going to be a challenge. Let me see. Sticking. You don't want it to stick. Okay, I'm just going to twirl a bit. Now the paint should work quite smoothly because of this base coat I put underneath. Okay. I don't necessarily want to keep my circle shapes. I'm just doing it slowly. Might want to keep some black in the corner there. Bring it back. watch what my paint's doing. Let's take it off the bottom there. Okay. I'll work it this way. There's a fly stuck on it. I'll get rid of the fly later. I have plenty of paint. Trying to keep a bit of an eye on my composition. Let's bring everything back. I'm glad I kept the gold thick. It could even be thicker. A bit more down this way, I think. Looking nice. Okay. Ooh, that looks awesome. I'll give it a little bit of a torch. Oh, gloves. Air bubbles. There's still a lot of paint on the canvas. Still heaps of paint on the canvas, but I really don't want to stretch it anymore. So if I was going to do it again, I'll probably put less in my cups just so I could stretch out my rings a bit more. But I'm afraid if I stretch it out more, I'm going to ruin my composition. The only risk with having a lot of paint left on your canvas is that it cracks when it dries. So fingers crossed it won't crack. I'll make sure it dries slowly, so there's less chance of that happening. Now this canvas won't fit underneath my food net. So what I do is I get some bricks on either side. I put some board over the top and then cover with mosquito netting, and I leave it like that for about a week until it's dry. But I'll take you in for a closer look. It looks really awesome. I'm happy with how that turned out. Here we go. The sparkly gold is just awesome in this painting. I'll bring you in close. I love the contrast between the black and then the gold and the red. You can see how a lot of the gold just disappears into the painting, even though I left it so thick. It's heavy and it disappears or sinks underneath the other colours. But I still think it's left these lovely rings, delicate gold rings in the painting, which are just beautiful. They'll get even more sparkly when they dry. Well, I'm not sure if the camera picked up all of the gold. I really hope it did, because it just looks stunning. So I'm just going to go around the edges to scrape off any bits or any drips. If you don't, it just looks untidy, and there's a risk of the drips pulling down the paint off your canvas. Touch up any bits of white that are still showing. Amazingly enough, there are still a couple. Well, I really like how this painting turned out. Perhaps the rings were a little bit more subtle than I was going for, but I do really like all the interesting patterns and rings the gold has made in the red, and the really lovely black bands around the outside. I'm sure though if I would have used any other colour apart from metallic in this one, I would have had much more defined rings. Now I hope I've inspired you to give ring pours a go. There's lots and lots of ways of doing them. You might try a thin mix to have your colours blend more, or a thicker mix to keep them more separate. You may experiment with the colours you have in the background, or if you're just doing one ring on a canvas, you may have no background at all. It's totally up to you. Now, if you enjoyed this video today, please take a moment to press the like button. And if you'd like to see more videos that I do, please take a moment to subscribe. So, happy painting, and we'll see you next time.